Hi, it's Mark Perera here, live from DPW Amsterdam. Busy start to the day and getting onto a topic that's really exciting to me. So we're talking about sustainability, and we're going to take it from a corporate leader's role to a startup founder's role. So really interesting to look at how we look at sustainability, how we're going to tackle this in the future. And I'm blessed to have Daniela and Kristina here to share on this journey as well. So straight into it, Kristina, maybe you can give a little bit of a background to your role at Tetra Pak, and then Daniela will come and hear a little bit about your role in a startup founder.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, thank you. First of all, hi everyone. My name is Kristina, and as Mark just said, I come from a company called Tetra Pak. And since relatively recently, I'm a product sustainability director in the company, which means that I'm working with a team of colleagues devoted to enhancing our sustainability offering, as well as the pipeline of sustainable products that we have. However, not only does it come down just to the deployment and development of the sustainable offering, but also to building strong capabilities in terms of both the competences, but also data, systems, processes to enhance the sales through sustainability.
Brilliant, and we're doing a panel session tomorrow as well, so looking to dive a little bit deeper into some of those topics as well. Daniela, how does it look from a startup founder as you look at sustainability and also maybe a little bit the journey of a startup founder in this space as well?
Absolutely, and thanks for having me. Excited to be here. So I am somebody that entered the startup space after working in corporate. So I was in procurement, managing teams during M&A and all things logistics. So I managed almost around $600 million of spend through the second largest merger in history. So when Dow and DuPont merged into one and then split into three. And then during the pandemic, I took inventory of my life the way that many did and decided that deathbed version of Daniela would be very upset if she didn't follow her dreams and try to solve what I believe is one of the most kind of pressing problems that the world is facing, which is the climate crisis. And since coming from procurement, one of the things that came out during the pandemic was that 98% of all S&P 500 CEOs were making really aggressive public announcements. Name a goal, name a date. They were launching it out into the ecosystem. What they quickly realized is that similar to you are what you eat and how you feed your body, for an organization, you are what you buy. And I knew firsthand in procurement that we did not have the data around the individual products and services and components that we were buying. And so took on that challenge, kind of took inventory of my life, said, why am I not doing the things that I want to be doing? The reason was fear, and that's just not a good enough reason for me. And so launched into starting Kloopify in 2021 in the middle of the pandemic, just to, add a little more uncertainty to my life. Why not? Why not? And it's been a fabulous journey because the sustainability space has welcomed kind of Kloopify and me with open arms. Because we are building a solution for procurement professionals by procurement professionals to do kind of three main things, which is decarbonize your supply chain through the lens of procurement and working with your suppliers, making sure that you get the right data from your suppliers to comply with these ever-growing and evolving regulatory requirements, alphabet soup of different things, CSRD, CBAM, and keep you off the Wall Street Journal for all the wrong reasons. And so it's been a journey and an adventure. It's very different than corporate, very, very different, but learning a lot along the way.
Fascinating. I didn't realize you'd come from corporate into the startup so quickly. So it's a great story, and looking forward to continue to see that track going forward as well. Kristina, maybe a little bit more about your role, how you got into the sustainability side, and obviously a huge amount of purpose in your role, Daniela. Maybe give a bit of intro on your switch into sustainability as a core focus.
No, well, I started in procurement, right? Or started first as a trainee and rotated to different geographies and organizations within the company, which gave me insight into our business from various perspectives. But then going into the procurement, it's been quite a few years where what I saw is that traditionally, of course, procurement has been seen as a very transactional profession with quotation mark limited value. But what I observed as well is that it's actually evolved into a strategic function that requires advanced competences, and those being driving AI, sustainability, optimizing delivery performance, and so on. And that is really where sustainability came into play for me. because I got a lot of fulfillment and personal motivation to drive it across various procurement categories. And then I think my learnings went really beyond the books because the complexities of the real world were completely different than what you can read maybe in the literature. But every new concept was definitely something that triggered my curiosity nerves and lured me into the topic even more. Last, I think the potential for transformation, as you just mentioned, Daniela, is something that personally I hold very dear to my heart, and that really then led me into sustainability unit itself.
Brilliant. With such a large amount of the sustainability agenda sitting outside of the four walls of the organization, then procurement's really going to be sitting at the forefront of hitting those net zero targets, but also looking across the whole ESG and sustainability side. Kristina, maybe you could talk through some of the innovative ways that you're trying to approach the sustainability side and particularly net zero, which seems to be kind of number one priority at the moment, especially when, as you say, the CEOs have put rather punchy commitments out there over the last few years. Now someone has to deliver, and it looks like procurement might be at the forefront today.
Correct. No, I think, well, first of all, when it comes to the sustainability agenda at Tetra Pak, it goes far beyond the environmental aspects, so climate, nature, and circularity, but also we have the food systems agenda, which is very strong, as well as the social sustainability agenda. And all of them, however, are incorporating our sustainability practices. Now, talking about procurement, of course, it's first and foremost comes down to the responsible sourcing and ensuring that we have the transparency and traceability of our sourcing practices, and supplier engagement, meaning that we are working and collaborating with suppliers that meet certain sustainability standards, as you mentioned some of them. So be that these science-based targets or UN Global Compact and contribution to the SDGs, CDP scores, and so on. Then it also goes to collaborating with suppliers to co-create certain solutions, because I think that we are moving from being just a very closed system that we do everything ourselves to leveraging on the collaboration to get something even greater for the world, right? And then I think in Tetra Pak there is a great emphasis on the circular economy, so enhancing recycling and reuse of the materials to reduce the waste and also the emissions. Yeah, decarbonization initiatives, I think
big,
if I start, it's quite a few, but definitely we do have the ambitious targets and are working to address those, yes.
On the supplier engagement side and collaboration, that hasn't always been the most natural position of procurement. Any lessons learned of actually collaborating and sometimes beyond the financial year? Some of these projects may take several years to work on together. Anything you could share with the audience in terms of lessons learned?
I think when it comes to sustainability and procurement practices, sometimes the premium price, that is the first thing that a procurement professional sees, does not come at the advantage of sustainable practices. However, it's important to make that shift in the narrative from sustainability being seen as the cost driver to being seen the key driver of value. And that means the sustainability goes hand in hand with total cost of ownership. So it's important to look not only at the price, but at the TCO, and be mindful of the benefits that will come in the long run. I think that's the most important thing to getting really the supplier engagement that is needed, as well as the customer engagement if you want the other side of the
Stakeholder management is still an important part of it all.
If I could add something to that, I think it's really important to meet your suppliers where they're at too, and prioritize areas that are going to maximize kind of your the ROI of your sustainability initiatives. Mm-hmm. So being able to leverage understanding kind of what suppliers, but more importantly, what commodities, what products, what services are kind of driving the most amount of your footprint. And then once you do that, you can understand the maturity. So to your point, have they set science-based targets? Do they have CDP reports? Where are they on this journey of adopting sustainability? And then once you understand the maturity, then you can create a really tailored plan on how you're going to work with them, whether that's giving them webinars or trainings and leveraging technologies like Kloopify to be able to do that, Or it's, hey, we're so advanced, we have environmental product declarations and life cycle assessment data, and being prepared to receive that data from your suppliers, and then knowing how to make it part of your day-to-day operations. To your point,
Absolutely.
making
Supplier
it part
readiness
of
is
the
very
total cost analysis, making it part of how you reward and evaluate suppliers.
I think it's a really good point. I think from some organizations, they're still kind of more in a dictating point. We want you to have a science-based target by this date. We want you to be disclosing on CDP, but not understanding the maturity of where they are just means you're acting dumb. And it's kind of this more compliance than actual engagement and development side.
You move it from carrot or from a stick to a carrot, right? And so once you understand the supplier's incentive mechanisms of what's going to get them to move in the direction that you want, then you can start to really collaborate on creative ways of, extending contract terms, or allocating more PO to a supplier, or working with them to say, hey, if you were to switch, you're in a really energy intensive field, if you prioritize kind of renewable energy or sustainable energy sources into your manufacturing process where we get your products, then you're going to have significant reductions. And when it's time to decide you versus someone else, when in a commodity space, especially where price, quality, and delivery are almost the same in a lot of areas, kind of sustainability and impact can be that thing that will lead, that can make the difference. Exactly.
So how Daniela, as you look at a fast-growing organization, it sounds like you're kind of doing this. How do you keep up with the changing world of sustainability and priorities from your corporate customers? Because it must mean you have to adapt and help them on that journey quite a lot.
I think it's staying true to our mission and vision, right? Our mission and vision of operationalizing sustainability within procurement, because procurement, we can unlock the power of procurement that way, but being flexible on how you get there and understanding that the things that you know right now may change as customer requirements begin to change, as regulatory landscape begins to change. And then allowing yourself to be able to kind of build into those existing systems. So the big key is stay true to your North Star, be flexible on the execution, but really listen to what your clients and customers are saying, what the challenges that they're facing, what their suppliers are saying, and working with their supply chain. And then always having kind of a finger on the pulse of what's going on, whether that be for us, and just a little tip is like setting up Google alerts on different regulatory requirements and different things that come up. And that way you just continuously get something in your inbox, something comes out, you can share it with the team. But it's all about kind of hearing from your clients what's the high priority and key important things, and then tying it together to how do we execute on that.
I guess, Kristina, in the corporate world, you're working in a fast-moving space as well. So does that change a little bit the culture of sustainability in the procurement practice, maybe from the more mature parts of the organization? Is it more dynamic in terms of the sustainable procurement agenda? Because I guess you're shifting a lot of behaviors in there as well.
I think it comes to the innate differences, right, between a startup and a corporate world, where when it comes to driving sustainability, probably the advantage of the corporate world would be the amount of resources, so you can scale the efforts to the level that is more impactful. But also on the other side, I think that the corporate world is more risk averse due to the number of stakeholders, the complexity of decision making, and so on, which is where the innovativeness and the faster innovations when it comes to sustainability comes into place. And where I see also the advantage of the startups is that innovation-wise, yet again, they are more value-driven rather than regulation-driven compared to what is predominantly present in the corporate world, right? Due to addressing of the public picture and anything that comes with a stick.
Well, hopefully we are moving from compliance to action.
Absolutely.
I think this is the decade of our lives, and we're scarily nearly halfway through it. And hopefully there's a big exponential hockey stick when it comes down to Scope 3 emissions in the second half. So as we look at 2030, where there's quite a lot of targets around sustainability, but beyond, what's some of the trends or predictions you might look at for sustainability, both from the corporate world and also in the startup world? Maybe you can kick off with that, Jenna.
All right, let's give it a shot. Okay, so what do I think is going to happen? I think my prediction is that we are going to move away from regulatory compliance and making this a stick to moving towards a carrot. There are so many examples where companies that have implemented sustainability and leverage this as a kind of core value that become revenue generating, that can outperform their competition, that truly investors are requiring it. There is a study by Deloitte that shared that there were about 70% of deals had been cut, M&A deals were canceled or called off because of lack of ESG commitments, or the ESG commitments were too soft. And so what we're seeing is that people, instead of thinking of climate change as this kind of existential crisis that only affects maybe communities, what we're seeing is it's really just going to affect our supply chains, and it's going to affect our ability to meet our customer demands. And the more you see it from that lens, and then the finance and the numbers start to make sense, where the risk of this potential disruption greatly outweighs the kind of the costs associated with implementing these solutions and technology, you're going to see a shift in mindset, especially in the United States, I would say, where revenue and money are a lot of the driving factors of why companies kind of are beginning to implement sustainability. But hey, I'm not mad at financially rewarding suppliers and companies that are not just saying it to the public, but ultimately providing the data and the facts that can support that transition.
Yeah, the green wishing, the greenwashing.
Greenwashing, oh yes.
I think green wishing as well. I think
greenwashing
sometimes
too.
they're the intent that they're going to achieve it, but they don't know how they're going to achieve it as part of it. And obviously the US election could have a rather large impact on the US going forward. But let's see how that goes in the next couple of months. Kristina, your kind of thoughts about the next 5-10 years when we look at the sustainable procurement?
First of all, absolutely agreeing with the more value-driven direction beyond the regulation. However, also greater transparency, supply chain transparency, meaning going beyond the tier 1 suppliers to understand our sustainable practices. As I mentioned before, greater supplier collaboration and innovation, so co-creating solutions. Then I believe that beyond looking only at price, it will be very important to know how to evaluate the supplier from sustainability perspective as well. And learn from all these crises that we've recently been through. I believe that supply chain resilience will become something very important, and therein also included that we shorten the value chains and then look a bit to localize or regionalize our huge supply chains if we're a global company, and foster local economies, thereby also reducing the GHG emissions.
Going through the journey of improving the data quality that your suppliers can provide you, right? It's not just about using industry averages or numbers. We're now getting to the point where we need to improve the data quality so that you can make the decision of what's the difference between buying resin from Dow versus SABIC, right? Right now, many procurement teams don't have the level of granularity or data quality that they need to make that decision. But I do believe that as we put more kind of pressure and collaboration within our suppliers and supply chain, you're going to improve that data quality. And the journey is what's going to unlock the value. It's not like now that I have the perfect data, all my problems are solved. No, the actual value gets unlocked through the journey of getting that better data quality and working with your suppliers.
Wow, I think we see quite a lot of companies looking at that perfect Scope 3 data set, and once they get that, they might start taking some action. I think we're on a journey to try and get the perfect data set, but it's going to take 5-10 years, as you say. I think that's the next goal of working with your suppliers to improve. And that also helps across the whole industry. As the data improves, the transparency improves, it will help the industry. And I think industry collaboration is also a key part of how we deliver on this. We've talked about regulation, and there's a huge regulation wall coming, and hopefully that only forces companies to really report, but also act on it. And I think act of the regulations and looking at section 12A of your CDP report and the narrative around what your Scope 3, I think we should be asking a few questions of not just the words, what's sitting behind those programs. So I think it'd be interesting to look at the system of record that sits behind them. But also we've got a lot of kind of consumer expectations, I guess, with Tetra Pak. How does that steer kind of the sustainability side? Because people are looking at things that are 100% recycled and so forth. So you're probably Tetra Pak at the front line of the brands that are using your packaging to make sure that they're getting the sustainability from the products coming through. Have you seen much changes as it comes through Tetra Pak to yourselves?
If I connect it to the story about data quality, that is absolutely something critical at both the ends, so supply and demand. So that's becoming increasingly important to be able to say this is what we do and to stand really behind what we are saying we do and avoid any greenwashing. Yeah, the consumers, I think the interest is increasing. The discussion that we had, TCO versus not versus sustainability, but and sustainability is something going to our favor. But I believe also that there is a way to reduce that cost sensitivity that still exists, unfortunately.
And one of the, both of you, it would be great to get your insight on this one. There's a lot of procurement functions who are now starting to get dedicated people to sustainable procurement as a focus. And you've both had the experience in corporate life, and I guess you're dealing with a lot of these people on the other side.
Yeah.
What pointers would you have for creating a sustainable procurement practice, and what does the role look like on that first person, and how do you expand the team? Quite a broad question, but maybe do you want to give
Well, here's what I've seen be successful on companies that have gone from, hey, we're just getting started, to now beginning to, okay, let's get our suppliers engaged. So one is you're always going to be the liaison with corporate sustainability or the EH&S team, simply because many times EH&S team and corporate sustainability are required to kind of get all the data together for regulatory compliance or sustainability reports. But the role of that sustainable procurement person isn't to manage and drive the entire sustainable procurement function, but instead to help set the strategy and make it part of how category managers create their playbooks, how buyers go into conversations. So train your team, set the strategy, and ultimately give your team the tools that they need in order to make it part of the organic conversations that they're already having. Don't reinvent the wheel, make it part of how you already operate and operationalize it. I mean, that's how you're gonna really drive value, because those relationships already exist. Those partnerships already exist. You probably are creating value with your suppliers in many other ways. This is just one additional thing that you're gonna add to kind of the breadth of things that procurement works on. But the key is making sure that they've got the assets and the tools and the data to know where to focus, why they should focus there, and then tying it back to kind of to the requirements that are coming from your leadership position. And so what we like to do is, even here at Kloopify, is we take a baseline. So we'll baseline your entire organization, both from an impact, but also from what data are you already capturing from your suppliers? Right. Because many times these data points can be leveraged from different requirements. So what you have on governance for CSRD can also be leveraged for a different regulatory requirement or something along those lines, or a corporate requirement or a CDP requirement. And so what we do at Kloopify is we streamline, we baseline what data are you already capturing from your suppliers and show you where you can leverage it in other kind of regulatory compliance areas, and then show you where your gaps are, and then ultimately fill those gaps with technology that allows you to collaborate with your suppliers and get that information.
I guess that's some positive touch points for the category managers to get more data, and they can say that's part of the journey as well. So, and then enriches the conversations they're having with the suppliers.
Exactly.
On that journey, how do you change the category managers and motivate them? Because still some CPOs don't see it as their responsibility, the Scope 3, and I can't see another function creating relationships with the suppliers to do it, but it hasn't sunk into all procurement functions that, you know, your category managers, your supplier managers, this is part of their day-to-day job. So is it how they motivate, is their performance linked
So I
to it?
have seen bonuses being tied to your kind of progress that you make, both in the data quality as well as how have you been able to unlock opportunities with your suppliers. So I think that's a really great way to kind of tie those two things together, because who doesn't want to get their year-end bonus? I think everyone does. And then it's about teaching. People like to know the why. If you give them the why and you break it down, you kind of do the 5 why, you know, the 5 why exercise, like why, and you get down to the root. I think most employees actually want to make it part of their job. We as humans and as consumers care about sustainability. And the more that we see companies walking the talk, or I think I said that right? Yeah.
Walk
the walk, talk the thing. The more they believe in the mission and the vision of the company, the more they trust their leadership, the more you build and you actually are able to acquire the best talent, because the up and coming talent, this is what they care about. And they will leave and they will tell their social media and all their friends that you are an organization that is lying and isn't actually delivering on the things that you promise and you're sharing to the entire world.
I guess the essence of that, though, the CPO has to own the number as well.
Absolutely.
They have to own those
CPO
data
has
points,
to own the
otherwise
number.
they can't really cascade it through. And again, if you look at the CDP report, there are sections of that of, does the procurement team have they been educated? Are they have their performance side? And I think sometimes it may be filled out. There's ticks on all those things, but if it's not coming in here, we're not getting the change. So I think for the CPOs out there, the responsibility is going to come to you. You either start doing that now and trying to put it in your targets, or you wait for 2 years when the board come to you and say, all right, you need to fast track this, and you're 2 years down the line on this journey.
And it's not the CPO's job to teach or train. There are solutions and people that come in that can support and help you through this journey. So it doesn't have to be this like Herculean task of, oh my gosh, I now need my entire team to become sustainability experts on top of becoming procurement leaders. No, once you have the right tools, when you have the right data, when you have the right technology that's going to come in and be an extension and a partner to you that speaks the procurement language, right? I think that's really important, that it needs to be designed for procurement. It can't be designed for the corporate sustainability team or for the marketing and sales team. It has to be built, purpose-built for procurement. And that way you'll get the buy-in, the traction, they'll speak the same language, and you can coach them through that entire journey.
Kristina, any build out from Daniela's part?
I think the core thing that really resonated with me is speaking the language of the procurement function and sustainability, speaking the same language between the two functions in the company if they exist as separate ones, right? Sustainability is speaking procurement language and vice versa. Why is it important? Because sometimes it is even that procurement professionals do things that have a sustainable impact effect that you can measure and demonstrate, but they just don't know that they do it. So it's also important to say, yeah, but it's easy, you can do it. So fostering the can-do attitude and training colleagues in sustainability, really building the knowledge up, because I believe that we are also at the stage of high willingness to contribute, but not knowing where to begin, how to do it. Then, beside this knowledge obstacle, as we spoke so far, it's the obstacle of, I want to do it, but then there's cost implication or price implication. What is the company's decision? And I think here the chief procurement officers really need to get that decision from sustainability unit or elsewhere in the company where it sits. And the last one is, unfortunately, sustainability gets more easily deprioritized against other initiatives. And there, I think the companies across the world need to have a clear stand.
Yeah, I think that's the point on the CPOs. Those targets need to be locked in. Otherwise, they don't get the resource, the money to do it. And also making those bold decisions. If everything comes down to cost, and if we look at the carbon cost of a contract versus just the financial part, and it on first, second, third time you get a solution which is better on the decarbonisation. If the procurement team or the business doesn't make at least some of those decisions from the decarbonisation versus pure cost, then the other people in the procurement organisation will start questioning whether any of the options which are kind of decarbonised friendly are going to come through. But I guess it's the journey we need to do. But like any change program, we need to find the champions, the winners, and I guess that's part of it. The individual category managers who are making a difference in their category, we need to recognise and reward them, and we need to do the press releases, which cost us nothing to do with our suppliers, to actually get out some good news that they're innovating with us and doing something positive around the decarbonisation and the broader sustainability side. Otherwise, again, it's carrot and stick with them as they engage.
There, if I may add, I think one of the key words which you just mentioned is the change management, and that is something that absolutely the procurement professionals, as we mature more into the sustainability journey, would need to become very strong at, both in terms of the advocacy internally and externally, but also managing the resistance that we're talking about.
So one of the companies I work with is Supplier Day, and they help organizations launch their programs and re-engage with their suppliers. I guess that's a common trend, maybe a trend that you're seeing with the companies who are really committed. They get their CEO and their board level execs actually talking to the suppliers and engaging them on the sustainability agenda, because it shows their priority, their backing on this as well. Are you seeing a similar?
Oh, absolutely. I think the board pressure continues to increase, and then you'll see that if a C-suite person is in the room making these claims, there's some kind of everyone kind of sits up a little bit straighter and is like, okay, this is serious. We've got to take this seriously. And then that C-suite professional, if they're empowered with data to understand, hey, this is why we're going after these areas of the company, then the employees understand, hey, not all sustainability initiatives are going to win, and that's okay. Sustainability shouldn't be the only thing that you consider, because there are so many other factors to making a company successful. But if you can explain hey, we are going to take a price increase over here because this is responsible for 30% of our footprint. So if we get this down 20% in the next whatever, we are now X percent closer to that end goal. But if we're looking at a commodity, a section of our business that isn't very carbon intensive, that we don't buy a lot from, and there's a sustainable option, but it's much more expensive, even if we get that sustainable option to zero, it doesn't have the magnitude of the impact into the whole organization. And you wouldn't know that if you don't have visibility into your supply chain. So I think, one, C-suite pressure and support is critical to success and driving that change management that you so eloquently spoke about. But it's also about having the data so that we can get to the why are we and why are we not choosing sustainability in our processes, in our kind of procurement choices.
Kristina, you talked about the collaboration piece. Any guidance on that when a category manager is taking the lead on this? They want to transform the category, drive the decarbonisation, work with their suppliers. How do they make that first step to create a portfolio of innovation projects with their suppliers, and how do they manage that whilst also doing their savings and report up to the team? Because I guess they need to be champions of the portfolio as well.
I think that's where the future of procurement lies, in terms of also the upskilling that we need to do. Why? Because it is now beyond just the exchange of the sustainability agenda and potential of change that either of the companies can do. It's really putting the things together and co-owning the greater good. And in that sense, I think the contracting part becomes interesting with IPRs, and then how we split the benefits and also the fees, if there would be any, right? So I think the innovation procurement becomes a new area to focus on in the years to come.
Yeah, I talked to my daughter's just gone off to university and doing a computer science
Congratulations.
degree. So I've been brainwashing her for 18 years, and she's taken the lead on that one. But I think the skill sets of design thinking and some of these broader skills are going to be really important for my daughter as they look at the jobs which probably haven't been invented yet, but also as we look at things like the innovation procurement. We need to get more into design thinking. How can we work with a group of suppliers to go back to the 5 whys and first principles of these things, so we can actually transform these categories as well. So it's a big change, and I think we've got a few sessions later on today talking about that subject. So hopefully we can extend that as well.
And get creative. I think that's the fun part of this adventure, right? If we think about it through the lens of like what the opportunities are, there's so many opportunities. You can co-invest. You can change contract terms. You can reward. Once you understand the dynamics, and then also ultimately kind of train and coach your suppliers and help them understand why you care, why they should care, and what the upside of them caring is. And then your team already knows these suppliers. They've been creative before. Kind of apply that creative mindset to this problem solving, to your point around design thinking, right?
And I think mindset is the key word, because it's going really from the competitive mindset and in getting the best deal to getting the best collaborative environment between the two parties.
I think it's interesting that we look at where procurement is today. I guess we got into the 7-step approach of kind of sourcing and that took a very refined part to the function. We put it through the sausage factory. I know there's a whole lot of Australia, but in the nicest possible, where we have a flow and the outcome is savings, and then there's a contract with performance management. But before that, I think we were trying to deal with what the business needed from a supply base, but also the innovation and cost. And we're balancing up a lot more of the attributes of innovation and new products. And where we've come back to now is we have to get a little bit more of the entrepreneurial spirit into procurement, where we are looking at the new innovations to transform the products and services, and we're going to have to collaborate in different ways. So I think the specialism that we built over the last 30 years or so is great in terms of the overall process, but now we have to break that in particular ways as well. So it's interesting to see how technology does that, but also how we create the new operating models within the procurement function. And that's one of the things I'm excited to see over the next 5 years as well. So with that, anything that you're really excited over the next 2 days? It's a lot of technology providers here, obviously Kloopify. I'm sure there's some collaborations that you're looking at. Anything you're looking particularly for the 2 sessions, 2 days?
Well, sustainability, of course, as as one of my main focuses, but definitely discovering where the where the future of procurement lays. I think it's a fantastic event where a lot of forward-looking companies are to feature their work. So curious about hearing about what's coming next.
I'm looking forward to the panel session with yourself as well. And Daniela, any final words?
Yeah, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to be here to speak on such an important topic and highlight kind of some of Kloopify's ways of integrating and operationalizing sustainability within procurement. I'm really excited to see the function continue to elevate, to become that strategic function that is so much more than just cost savings, but really goes into value creation and to revenue generating opportunities, and really being recognized as like the backbone of organizations that feeds companies. And so I'm really excited about collaborating, networking, meeting all of these incredible kind of companies and people that are driving this in the front line. And that's what the privilege and honor that I get is to meet everyone here.
That's great. I think we have trailblazers here, whether it's from the corporate world or the startup world. And if we can get these people working together on the sustainability side, we're going to be in a great part. I'm really excited. I've got Paul Polman next. So I'm a fanboy of Paul Polman, ex-CEO of Unilever. So we've got an hour with him with some of the CPOs. So it should be great for that session. But we're going to wrap up the session now. It was a great conversation with Kristina and Daniela on corporate and startup founders and the entrepreneurial side of sustainable procurement. And we look forward to seeing you in the next session as well. Cheers.